and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I will be covering the ice dance event at the 2024 World Figure Skating Championships. And I got into my previews episode, and I predicted the Italians would win, and Gilles and Poirier would be shut out because the Brits were going to take bronze. And I think in the back of my head, I was like, okay, none of these things are going to happen, right? I'm always like expecting for some form of chaos to rear its head at some point in ice dance, and it just never really does. And so it made me wonder, like, okay, when's the last time somebody won the world championships and they came from behind? And you have to go back quite a bit. You have to go back to 2015, and this involves Chalk and Bates. In 2015, Chalk and Bates won the, I guess it was probably called the short dance at that point. I don't think it was called the rhythm dance then, but they won that segment of the competition. They got level fours on everything. Papadakis and Cizeron, on the other hand, got level threes on their pattern steps, on their step sequence, and they ended up in fourth. Papadakis and Cizeron win the free dance in big fashion and ultimately win the world championships. And that's the last time that we saw someone that did not win the rhythm dance, short dance, etc., win the world title. 9 years. And then if you go back to what was the last one even before that, you would have to go back to 2011. And in 2011, Virtue and Moyer won the, whatever it was called then, the short dance, I think. And then Davis and White won the free dance and won the world title. So in the last 15 years, because I went all the way back to 2009, we've had two incidences of an ice dance team winning the world title when they didn't win the rhythm dance, short dance, original dance section of the competition. And that's wild to me. Now, if you go back to 2009, you're also incorporating the compulsory dance. And so in that case, you did have Belbin Augusto win the original dance, but the compulsory was Domnima and Shabalin 1, Belbin and Augusto 2, Virtue and Moyer 3. And so even though there was some shakeup in the original dance and in the free dance, ultimately the end result was those exact same three teams in that exact same order. Compulsory, original dance, free dance was exactly what it was in the compulsory dance, which was the smallest part of the score, right? So I say all this to say that it appears from what we've seen in the last 15 years, mostly in IJS, and of course, it was definitely the case in the 6.0, we saw very little movement, but still, we just don't see a lot of movement once somebody wins what is the equivalent of the short program in ice dance. Because even in some of these instances when teams haven't won the free dance, like we had here, you go back to 2014, you had Capellone and Lenote first in the short dance and fourth in the free dance, but they still won. Virtue and Moyer won the world championships in 2017, lost the free dance to Papadakis and Cizeron. So we see that happen, but it just kind of appears that the recipe for winning is really taking care of business in that first part of the competition in what is now the rhythm dance. And that's no different basically than what we had here. Now, do we see movement in other ordinals? Yes, more so at the third place ordinal than we see in the second place. But when I look at that and I look at teams like Gilles and Poirier, Brits, like whoever you are, and you're trying to chase those teams at the top, you've got to have that rhythm dance really, really, really strong because it's going to be really, really hard for you to be able to move up. That's just what history has shown us. And so coming into this event, I was really expecting that we would probably see Maddie and Evan make some kind of mistake. And as I'll talk about here in a second, there was a tiny mistake in the free dance, but ultimately they averted disaster and were able to win on the strength of their rhythm dance. which is interesting because Chalk and Bates were a team that was largely more of a free dance team. I mean, in the last Olympic cycle and maybe even the cycle before that, their rhythm dance, short dances have never been the strongest component of their skating. But it certainly has propelled them in situations in their career at different times, and this one was no different. So before I get into the results, I wanted to just address just a little bit. There's a lot of talk, not just this after this Worlds, but also after last Worlds as well, and probably also 2 years ago after 2022 Worlds, that a lot of people really want to see these top teams move on because they want them to allow the younger teams, this is the words that I'm seeing, allow the younger teams to win something, which to me is a little bit strange because these teams really had to wait for other teams to move on for them to get their shot, right? Definitely in the case of Guinard and Fabry, who are the oldest of these top three teams, they never got a medal before. Gillis and Poirier did get at least one bronze before this Olympic cycle. And of course, Chalk and Bates had three medals, but not that top spot. And for me, like if teams are still hungry and they still want to perform, like I feel very much like Jason Brown said at Nationals, like if they want to win, they're going to have to go and take it from me. And it's not a foregone conclusion because, I mean, let's be honest. This is what happened to Chalk and Bates in the last Olympic cycle. Weaver and Poje both were the two teams who looked like they were going to ascend to world championships coming into the 2014-2015 season. And by the end of that season, it was Papadakis and Cizeron who went from 13th in that previous world championships to winning everything. And so it's not impossible for that to happen. You look at the rise of Davis and Wide and Virtue and Moyer, they jumped a lot of teams to get there. And so it's not a foregone conclusion that 2 years from now, if all three of these teams stay in, like it kind of appears that they are, that they're going to be the Olympic podium. Now, we have seen that happen. If we go back to 2019, that podium from that World Championships was the exact Olympic podium that we had in 2022. So it could happen, but we could also have a situation where next season, some of these teams that are behind them all of a sudden makes this large leap and ascends and jumps past them. So it's not impossible. So for the people that comment that somehow they've got a stranglehold on it, we have seen in the past that a really hotshot, talented young team can make that jump. Don't necessarily have to wait for these teams to retire. And then I also kind of want to address for a lot of the Americans who want to see them retire, how on earth would US hold on to three spots if Chalk and Bates had moved on? I mean, I think the strides that Christine and Anthony have made, as I'll talk about here in a second, are absolutely incredible. But there's no way they would have two teams that would have placements enough to keep those spots. They're not like, where Canada probably would be able to do that. The US at this point would not be able to. And then you don't have that extra spot for a young team to be able to get some experience. And so you have to take these things into consideration, just like a lot of people are hoping that Papadakis and Cizeron come back. Which, again, if they're hungry and they want to come back and get more Olympic medals, they've got a couple, but hey, why not? They're still young. Okay. But I certainly hope if they do come back, that they come back next season so they're able to be part of that Olympic qualifying spots. Because I would really hate for them to come back in the 2025-26 season when France would only have likely two world spots. So then all of a sudden, either Lopareva or Bruzeau or Demogé and Lemercier wouldn't get to go to the Olympics because Papadakis and Cizeron would not have been at the Worlds prior to help getting an extra third spot that it would allow them to go. So I think these are just things to think about when we throw out some of these statements. I wish these people were to retire. Like, what are the implications of some of these things? And is there still not a path for some of these young teams to jump over them? I think that there always is. All right. Let's get into the results. So the winners here were Madison Chalk and Evan Bates, winning their second world title in consecutive years. So there was a lot on the media about, they're the first U.S. team to ever win consecutive titles. Well, yeah, because they're only the second U.S. team to ever win a world title, right? We've had an amazing amount of success with ice dance teams in the last 20 years or so, but we haven't had a lot of teams be able to extend to the top, right? Just Davis and White, and now Chalk and Bates. And so, yes, it's amazing that they were able to repeat. But let's also just be amazed by the fact that, they're able to win a world championships at all, which outside of Davis and White, that hasn't happened. So they win here largely on the strength of their rhythm dance, which I didn't have a problem with the ordinals in the rhythm dance. But I definitely agree with people that feel like that the score for Chalk and Bates, I didn't see that it was necessary for them to be 2.5 points ahead of these other teams. I mean, again, I don't have a problem with the ordinals, but if you've got, Guenard and Fabry at 87, and you've got Piper, Gillis, and Poirier kind of under that, like Madison and Evan, they can't be 88, or low 89. Like it just seemed like it was a point and a half higher than it probably really needed to. And if I'm being really honest, I don't think that Maddie and Evan were as sharp in this world title as they were in last world title. And there was talk, of course, after last year, but the fall that they had in the free skate, and Mark Hanratty even mentioned it on the feed that, they really wanted to skate clean here because they felt like there was a little bit of a shadow over their world title last year because they had the fall. But I felt like I was more drawn into their free dance at Worlds last year than I was with their free dance this year that was supposedly cleaner. And I thought that their rhythm dance last year was also sharper than it was this season. Now, their rhythm dance last year scored higher than this year's did, fairly so. Because again, I thought it was a lot sharper. That being said, I thought they performed the best rhythm dance of the competition, and they were rightly in first after the rhythm dance. And I also thought that they were right to have lost the free dance to Gillis and Poirier. And so let's talk about the rhythm dance. I think the reason that this vehicle especially has been so effective for them this season is they just look incredibly comfortable and confident in this, more so than I feel like we've ever really seen them in the past. I feel like Evan is showcased much better in this particular routine than he is in other programs that they have done, especially in the past 2 years. They're a really, really good example of a team that looks at each other a lot. Some of these teams that you're like, does so even look at each other? You look at Maddie and Evan, they're looking at each other constantly. And that really helps that connection that they have really kind of come across much, much better. The free dance, they have 2 really cool lifts to start, right? But the first one had just a little bit of a hitch on it. They got it done, which props to them for getting it done. I don't know how, because if you look at what they did in previous performances this season, you'll see that they got onto the boot faster and that they got more revolutions into the lift. So they ended up only getting a level 2 on their stationary lift here. So for people that were like, they didn't even get penalized. Oh, yes, they did. They got dropped down 2 levels. So, and Madison also only had a level 2 on her 1 footstep. I felt like they had, decent amount of speed in their rhythm dance. Their free dance did feel a little slow to me. I don't know if part of it is the music. The music is kind of slow. I think they have changed like the choreographic assistant jumps that they sort of did in the middle that really sort of slowed the program down to a stop. They did that at nationals. Of course, again, it was hard to sort of evaluate it because they were sick and it was a mess. But I'm going to talk about this with a few different people as we get down. But Maddie and Evan were 13th in base value, but they were second in GOE, which is kind of what ice dance has become. Like they've sort of almost dumbed down in some ways, especially in the rhythm dance. They've done this now that we have the choreographic rhythm sequence that doesn't even get a level, and everything is just sort of based on GOE. And of course, they a few years ago increased the GOE so that you get 5 instead of 3. So obviously, they were not as strong technically as most of the other teams here. I mean, 13th out of 20 teams would put them in the bottom half but they get propped up on GOE. So again, I think it was fair that they won the rhythm dance. I thought they were the best team in the rhythm dance. I thought it was fair that they were, you know, second here in the free dance. And ultimately, again, on the strength of their rhythm dance, they win the world title. And it's not unlike what happened with them at the 2022 national championships. They had a really strong rhythm dance. Maddie Hubble had an issue on a twizzle. They were 2.5 points ahead. And even though Maddie and Zach won the free skate, there was no way for them to sort of make up those points because this is not like single skating, right? Like if you're 2.5 points behind in singles, like if somebody doubles a triple, they step out of a jump, like there's 2.5 points right there. You just don't have that in ice dance because the difference between a level 3 twizzle and a level 4 twizzle is just not that much. The difference between a level 2 1 foot step and a level 3 1 foot step is just not that much. And a lot of times it's made up for in GOE. So unless you make a really big mistake and get negative GOE, it's just really, really hard to bring yourself up. Okay, so moving on here to our number 2 team, and that was Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier, the hometown team. In the rhythm dance, they were tied with the highest base value with Carrera in Ponomarenko. And I was just holding my breath during those Piper's Twizzles because she's been a little shaky on them at times during the season. But they nailed it. I thought it was fun. I thought they really lean into the cheese very much so. It was interesting because at the Grand Prix final that Gillis and Poirier won back in 2022, they did not have the strongest technical elements, but they were getting high GOEs on everything. And so they still won with that. And here it's like things had flipped, right? So here they were actually getting higher technical elements, which is not typically their strong point, but then they were getting low GOE. So I don't get it. I think the thing for them next season, like I mentioned before, is going to be to really, really have a nice, strong rhythm dance. I thought they had a great rhythm dance last season. I thought it was strong. They unfortunately lost some momentum with Piper's cancer diagnosis. And so coming into Worlds last season, they weren't quite at that same level that they had been in the fall. But this season, I feel like they've been pretty consistent all season. But you have seen this sort of clear pattern with the judges preferring the Italians and Chalk and Bates over them in the rhythm dance. And so while this free dance has been good all season, it was really at another level here. It helped that they were at home. It helped that they were the last to go in the competition. But they just really, for me, had the free dance of the night. Paul did have some level issues. All three of the top 3 teams had some level issues somewhere, but they were the cleanest, and I thought they were well deserved in winning the free dance. They were just too far behind. They needed like a 135.7 to win, and that would be just numbers that we have not seen. And this event in general was a little bit lower scoring than what we saw last year. But good on them, and they have made comments after the fact that they, silver this year, perhaps gold next year. So it looks like they are definitely planning to continue, and I think they would probably love nothing more than to get on U.S. ice and beat the Americans like the Americans beat them on their home soil this year. So we'll see. I think this is a really great, fun rivalry. I think if the Italians could beat them once or, then it would be a really great 3-way rivalry. But I think right now, between the two of them, it's a really good rivalry, and I look forward to seeing what both of these teams bring to the table next year. In third place was Guinard and Fabri of Italy. And in their rhythm dance, they actually were not as sharp as we are used to seeing them in that midline step that they use to end their rhythm dance. Both of them got a level 2 on that, and they're usually pretty good, especially this season, to get a level 3. But again, I thought they were strong and confident. I just love like their midline step. Like Marco is just living in that so much. And I really like the exit they have out of their lift. I don't love the lift, but the exit out of it helps with my enjoyment of it. And so again, even though their base value was a little lower than Gillis and Poirier, I thought that they were justified in being second place going into the free dance. In the free dance, however, they had a probably one of the rougher outings that we have seen from them this season. After I gave them all this lovely glowing compliments in the preview episode talking about how consistent they were 18th in base value. 18th. And I just talked about Chalk and Bates being 13th. This team was 18th, but third in GOE. So again, very much propped up. Again, I would not have put them any lower than third still myself. They obviously had the just heart-stopping wardrobe malfunction right at the end of their program where her skirt got stuck on the bottom of her skate. And I was sitting there like, oh my God, what are they going to do? Because if they stop the program, you get like a, points deducted off for that type of a violation. I'm like, is the referee going to blow the whistle? And ultimately, Charlene said after the fact that she knew they just had 2 elements left in the program and she was just going to hope to get through it. So kind of like Chalk and Bates, they ended up with just a level 2 on their stationary lift to end their program. But, they got through it. They were lucky that it happened at the end of the program. And they still got a decent score, 129. That obviously was not enough to keep them in the silver medal position. They dropped down to bronze, but I think that they're lucky there that they didn't have a complete disaster because that was so unsafe. So I was definitely bummed because this has been one of my favorite routines all season. And it wasn't the best outing of this particular one, but still just some really beautiful and stunning moments in it. All right, in fourth place was Fear and Gibson. And I know some people said they thought they would have had them. I saw some people even say they would have put them in second after the rhythm dance. And I just thought they were just noticeably slower than the top 3 to me. Only a level 2 in their midline step. I will give them kudos for having the best rotational lift in the rhythm dance. But I would make a really good argument for them being 5th behind Lajoie and Legat in both segments. And so, and then in the free dance, I just don't think that they've captured the magic anymore this season that they had at NHK Trophy. Like, I think that was their best outing of that free dance, and it was rewarded as such. But I feel like we just haven't really seen it. They had some issues with the spin at Grand Prix Final and at Europeans. And the spin was perfectly fine here. But I just didn't think their 1-foot turn sequence was as good as Marjorie and Zach were. And for me, I mean, I expected them to be in 4th. Well, I mean, I did expect them to be in 4th, even though I thought they might pull an upset. And they were in 4th. The question for me going forward with them next year is, are they going to stay in 4th? Are they going to be able to knock on the door and bust through it? Or are they going to get passed by some of these other teams that I think are probably better than they are? So, but overall, I think this has been a very, very strong season for them. And the question next season is, how they're going to capitalize on it. So at this point, we know what the theme is going to be for the rhythm dance next year. What do Lila and Lewis do with 50s, 60s, 70s? They're going to have to get out of the pop box a little bit, right? So we'll see. All right, in 5th place was Marjorie Lajoie and Zach Legat of Canada. And this was their first competition back after coming from Marjorie's concussion. Was hoping that they would do well. Wasn't sure really what to expect. And I thought they were just absolutely spectacular. I thought their rhythm dance was really strong. They probably suffered a bit from going in that second to last group, even though they still got an 82. You can really see their speed. I feel like there's some things that don't translate as well from the TV, but some teams you can absolutely see it. And like Marjorie and Zach are those teams that you can really see the speed that they bring, and really enjoyed it. In the free dance, I think I was just mesmerized from beginning to end. I didn't write a single note. I have loved this free dance since the first time I saw it in the Challengers, and it's just been so mesmerizing because we've seen so many different like piano, music, all of that, But when you just have some teams that are just special, they can elevate just anything. And I love this program. And I love their free skate last year too. Like it was number 2 on my season's best list last year. And I wasn't sure how they were going to top it. And somehow they managed to do that. And the crowd responded to them so great. Again, they're on home ice. And so they're getting that extra energy. But you also got to imagine it's also got to be really nerve wracking at the same time. And I just thought they really rose to the moment. I was so excited to see them in the last group. And I thought they just really took advantage of it. And I made a statement, probably at Skate America, that I thought they were, the second best Canadian team and that I thought they were better than Fair and Gibson. And I haven't changed my mind on that. And I know people are saying, well, they're looking for 2027 world champions or something like that. But I mean, like I said earlier, like you continue to improve, like you knock on that door, like you bust through that door, because they're going to be seated in the Grand Prix next season, and they're going to have an opportunity to get back to Grand Prix final again. There was certainly an opening at Grand Prix final this year from the mistakes that some of the other teams made, and they weren't able to capitalize on it. And now that they've had a year where they've been at Grand Prix final, they've been top 5 at Worlds, then, I think sky's the limit for them if they can, pick good material again next season like they have these last 2 years. 6th place here was Reed and Amber Levicius of Lithuania, coming off of what has been the best season of their careers. 2 bronze medals on the Grand Prix, a bronze at Europeans, and now top 6 at Worlds. And their rhythm dance, I think they just look so powerful. I just love the opening sequence that they do with the twizzles. Their free dance. So I gotta be honest, I've seen this free dance now 5, 6 times. I had no idea what it was about until Mark explained it. So apparently it's about technology. And so at the end, when they're looking at their hands or they're going back to their phones. I didn't know this the whole season. Like either I missed it or it hasn't been explained. I have no idea. So interesting. I need to watch it again now that I fully understand the concept of the program. I mean, I've enjoyed the program all season, but I had no idea what it was about. So that was interesting. They were actually 9th in the free dance, but they maintained their 6th position. There was a lot of teams who were kind of, scored very similarly together. So there wasn't quite a lot of movement there. But I thought that was interesting that they did not score as well in the free skate as they did in the rhythm dance. 7th place here was a very nice surprise, and that was Christina Carrera and Anthony Ponomarenko of the U.S. And she really talked about both going into the championships and here at the championships, just how working with Madison Hubble has really helped her with her confidence. And I love that, Maddie was in the kiss and cry with him here. I think that she just had a baby. I think the baby was in Montreal with him in tow at times on the practice rink. But the rhythm dance was the best that they have done just all season. I think they have one of the better choreographic rhythm sequences that anybody else is doing, and perhaps that was helped by them getting a exclamation point on it very early in the season and having to rework some things on that. They were tied with Piper and Paul in the rhythm dance for the highest levels. I think that they also had the highest levels at 4 consonants as well. In the free dance, they were tied with the highest levels with Marjorie and Zach, which means that if you took the base value of the rhythm dance and the base value of the free dance, Christine and Anthony had the best levels of the entire world championship. And I think that's just showing the phenomenal growth that this team has made, especially this season. We saw a little bit of it last season, but it has just really come to fruition this season. And it's helped by the fact that they have, just really great material. But I think the glow up of Christina has just been on another level, because even though ice dance teams are, equal man, equal woman, it still is sort of in this cliche where it's like the women's got to stand out. Like she's still got to be really strong. And Christina gets better levels than Anthony does at this point. I mean, I think she was the only person who got a level 4 on her 1 foot turn sequence in the rhythm dance. I mean, in the free dance. And when I was watching it in real time, I was like, wow, that was really good. Before the level even came up, I was like, that's the best 1 foot step we've seen all day. And she got a level 4 and it stayed a level 4. Somebody got a level 4 at some point, but it was leveled down. But just really, really fantastic. The only thing was it was a little rough, a little shaky on their curve lift. You could sort of see it, and so which just shows that they have room to improve still. But and Mark made a comment at some point that they have like a shorter glide, and I kind of took that to mean that that was maybe the difference between them and some of the top teams. So I thought that was interesting. They got 121 points here, which was way above their personal best, which I think was just under 117 internationally. Now, if you compare that to what Grant and Parsons got last year, Grant and Parsons got a 122.7, so it was a little less than that. But this championships in general was a bit lower scoring than what we saw last season. I kind of found, although like I said, we did have a lot of teams that were kind of scored very similarly, very close together. But Christina and Anthony did move up. They were eighth after the rhythm dance, and they did move ahead of the French team, Lopareva and Briseau, on the strength of their free dance. So I am extremely excited and encouraged for these two. Just I just felt justified in a way because I've been saying in the fall, like, why are they getting underscored? Like they're killing it. And in here for them to get what they really have been deserving. In fact, I would have gone higher in the free dance, honestly. I thought they should have got a 122, 123, 124, which is what Marjorie and Zach got, which I thought they could have got a higher score too. But yeah, just super, super, super. All right. In eighth place was Lopareva and Briseau of France. And their rhythm dance, I mean, people either love it or they hate it, right? I mean, I've seen more polarity on this program than I have in maybe any program across all 4 disciplines. Like it's wild. It is so different, which is what I like about it. Because I mean, how many times do we need to hear Bonnie Tyler or Prince or Michael Jackson? This was at least very, very different, right? So, and then in their free dance, it's been, I think that they really picked 2 programs, and not that I didn't like their programs last year, but I thought they really picked 2 programs that really showcase their strengths really well, which I think a lot of teams don't do a good job of. But I also love when teams just find a way to show us a lot of range, and that's what they've done this year. So they got over 80 in their rhythm dance, they got over 120 in their free dance to get over 120, 200 points, which is a big milestone for these two and exciting. I think French, ice dance, which people didn't know what once Papadakis and Cizeron stepped away, like what's French ice dance going to look like? And here we are 2 years removed from the Olympics. And, France has a couple of really, really strong teams. Ninth place here was perhaps a surprise for some people, and that was Laurence Fournier-Budry and Nikolai Sorensen of Canada. And they were 10th in the rhythm dance, but 6th in the free. Still only pulled themselves up to 9th because they were pretty far behind some of these other teams, like 5 points behind in some cases, some of these teams ahead of them. And they also went a little bit early in the free dance, so they scored well in the free dance, but maybe a point or two below what they would have scored if they had been in the final group like they were expected to be. So in the rhythm dance, she had a new outfit for her. Okay, why? I mean, it was still the same, like it was still a red top, but she was just, instead of, a top that covered the entire torso, she just wanted to show off her midriff again, I guess. She fell out of the second twizzle and put her foot down, and so that was a big, big mistake. They also didn't do great on their step sequences. She got a level 2, he got a level 1. So just, in general, just not good. 13th in technical elements. They were 7th in PCS. She didn't really seem too upset after the fact, which was kind of weird to me. Again, I'm not advocating people be self-deprecating or beat themselves up, but I thought she'd just be a little disappointed, that they weren't going to be contending for a medal. I mean, not that they were going to contend for a medal anyway. I was really interested to see how they were going to be received from the judges and received from the crowd. And because of the mistake, we don't really get a true feeling of how they were received from the judges. Because while Marjorie and Zach did beat them, in the free dance. Had they both been in the last group together, would that have been the same case? I don't know. Christine Brennan made a remark that she felt like that their response was muted. Uh, I've heard reports from people that were there that said they don't agree with that. And from my standpoint, from listening, I thought maybe it was a little bit muted when they introduced them, like at the beginning of the warm up. But at least for their performances, it seemed just as strong as it was pretty much for any other Canadian team. And I wasn't surprised by that. So I think most Canadian figure skating fans that were at the event had no idea anything about the Safe Sport report. I heard a lot of people bought tickets like the day of and came, and it might have been kind of an issue, kind of like it was at U.S. Nationals, like in Columbus. Like people are just coming to get a good show. They don't know anything about kind of what's going on in the world of figure skating, and they don't really know about the Safe Sport report and some of the things that are sort of going on with this particular skater. In the free dance, Nick had a fall in the warm-ups and hit the boards. And then in their actual performance, they were, very strongly scored. Technical elements were very strong. I thought the choreographic assistant jumps just kind of slowed the program down for me. I just thought he looked stiff. And I was like, asking myself, like, has he looked this stiff all year? Like, am I just noticing it more because I'm watching him more and I'm usually watching Lolo? I don't know. I just don't think this free dance suits him. I mean, I didn't feel like either of these programs were good programs all season, but it just really didn't seem to suit him in this particular competition. Just like I said, he just seemed stiff to me. And we very, very seldom see both Marie-France and Patrice in the Kiss and Cry. It's always one or the other. Like they have their certain teams that they're sort of earmarked to, like, North American teams are usually with Patrice. You got certain European teams that are with Marie-France. And so it's very rare for you to see them both in the Kiss and Cry. And in the free dance, after Lolo and Nick's performance, they were both in the Kiss and Cry with them together. And Marie-France was holding his hand. And it was obvious, in a very obvious show of support, which I thought was an interesting choice. So they have been turning off the comments mostly in any posts that have any pictures of Lolo and Nick. And so I don't know. My thoughts on the situation haven't changed, but I think it's still fair to be frustrated for those fans that are, myself included. I understand that the hands are tied. They were going to be here anyway. I was definitely hoping that Christine Brennan would be on at Montreal, would ask some tough questions, but it doesn't appear to me that she was there. It looked very much from her tweets that she was reporting from afar. And that's unfortunate. But anyway, moving on to the 10th place team, that was Turkula and Versluis from Finland. And the rhythm dance, I thought their levels were better here. Still, they were 11th in GOE, which, was right about where they were. And if you look at GOE, like go to skatingscores.com and look at GOE, you pretty much see the standings. Like the first place team gets first in GOE, the second place team gets second in GOE, the third place team gets third in GOE. It's interesting. You either see that or you see, as I've mentioned in some of these sort of really wide variances between like their technical score and their GOE score. But the GOE is just very, very telling in terms of where these teams are in the standings. It's really interesting, kind of wild. But anyway, they have said to the press that they are very happy to move on from the 80s, which, I couldn't tell because I've really enjoyed their rhythm dance all season. But I get it. What will they do next year? Like, this is a team that would really benefit from a waltz or a polka or some nice pattern step from, years past. And now they get, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So they're going to be going to the sock hop or the disco, which, again, I don't think is any better for this team. So I'm so sorry, guys. Especially since, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that what you do in the rhythm dance matters so much. All right. In their free dance, though, I mean, this is such a stunning free dance. I mean, that stationary lift, rotational lift combo, I mean, it gets close to 4 on that grade of execution. It's so, so good. It was great last year in the program as well. They had problems on the Twizzles for Matthias. Um, Straight line lift is so complicated, but they make it look like so easy. And that 116 that they got for their score is just too low. I mean, come on. I would have had them way higher in the standings, at least 120. Like, I would have had them probably eighth behind Carrera and Ponomarenko. I would have had them over Loper, and Brazeau, and Reed and Amber Levicius. I hope next season that they can, it's not that they don't have technical issues, because they do, but they're also just so brilliant. And I know that they're frustrated because they had this great rise last season. They didn't have a great Worlds, but they had mistakes at Worlds. And here they, really pretty clean, and they just, kind of in that same spot, just like right in the top 10, and, right on the cusp of not being in the top 10. And I just feel like they're better than that. All right. In 11th place was the French team of Desmogés and Le Mercier, and they continue to have this really great rise that we have seen from them this season. The rhythm dance has really grown on me. I've enjoyed it all season. I've talked about the costumes all season, but it's just such a fun rhythm dance. And then their free skate is just, I love the contrast of like the subtle beginning and then like this more chaotic kind of piano music that ends the program. Their character step is really fantastic. The lift that they do is really fantastic. She just put up a video, I think yesterday, of her putting her hair in this, I don't even know what to call it, how she wears it in the free dance, which frankly, I'm not even sure that I noticed all season. I mean, I guess I thought maybe she had braided it a little bit, but mostly you just notice a ponytail. So it takes her over 2 hours to do this hairstyle, okay? It's not makeup, putting on costume, like literally just over 2 hours just to do the hair. And I'm like, is it even worth it? Like, is it even worth it? I mean, it looks cool, but I don't know, it was wild. So you can go to Instagram and check that out. It's pretty funny. But they were so strong. But Mark made a comment when they were doing the rhythm dance that the group that they work with, their coaching team, that they're known for not getting a lot of ice coverage. I was like, that's interesting. Like, that's something that I really want to try to zone in and watch with them next season, especially any events that I'm able to see live that they might be at, and see if I can see what Mark is saying about them not getting as much ice coverage. Because to me, they've got like all the makings of a really, really good team, and the rise that we have seen them in terms of their scores and just in terms of their overall performance, just from last year to this year, has really been pretty astounding. So I'm really excited about this team. I've just really enjoyed them this year. All right. In 12th place was Diana Davis and Gleb Smolkin of Georgia. And they, in the rhythm dance, had changed her costume with a lot of cutouts. I don't know. I don't know what it really did. I don't know. I didn't like the first one. I didn't really like this one either. They just kind of look unrefined to me in this. They're doing Bad, then Liberia Girl, and then Cheetah. And of course, I'm always looking at this and just thinking Zingis and Kolesnik were so much better. But, it's not terrible. It's just fine, is what I would say. In their free dance, she had a new dress. Thank goodness. It was so much better than the tutu that she's been wearing. I thought that they had a smoother entry into that lift that they do, the upside down lift, that was really cool in the air, but I've just been kind of harping all season since I first saw it at maybe like Lake Placid that it just looked kind of rough to get into. But the camera angle was also just awful, not just in this, but just all throughout the event. At times just really left a lot to be desired. So it definitely wasn't the best camera angle to see the lift, but it did look a little bit improved there. I thought their 1 foot turn sequence was really effective with the music, but I think the program just kind of wears as it goes. I think it needs a softer section to sort of even it out. And they did not have as successful in the free skate as they had in the rhythm dance. They were 14th in the free skate, had some level issues, but fortunately for them, they did not drop. In 13th place was the Morascheks of the Czech Republic, and they were a team that had a big range in terms of their base value and their GOE. So unfortunately, I missed their rhythm dance. I've seen it multiple times this season, but I missed it live. And so I wasn't really worried about going back and watching it on Peacock, because Peacock, you've got to watch the stuff within like 48 hours and they don't mess around. Like it'll literally say 11 minutes left. But because I was like, I'll just go and watch it on the ISU feed, like no problem, which is what I had to do with a couple of free dances that I missed. Well, I go back to watch the rhythm dance and it has been blocked by Warner Music Group. And I've heard that it has been very, very frustrating for people this season because of all of the people using Prince has blocked out a lot of the ability to watch video. And so I was not able to go back and watch the rhythm dance because of that. So I apparently it was good, but I couldn't tell you that it was great. I feel like I saw like I was able to see like the replay part, like it was over. I should have just like rewinded it. I just didn't in my mind think that I wouldn't be able to go back and watch it. But anyway, I did see their free dance. And first of all, I was so excited that it was clean because I've not just at times this season, but definitely too when they were juniors, it's just always like a mistake somewhere, a twizzle, a lift or something. So to see them go clean was fantastic. Also, I was biting my nails the entire first half of the free dance because I was so worried that Czech Republic wasn't going to be able to retain 2 spots. And I'll get to the Tashlers here in a second, but they needed to do well here. If they had dropped 1 spot, it would have been a disaster. So, but they were really strong here. In this, so going back to the rhythm dance not the rhythm dance, the free dance, they were 4th in base value, which was the same as Gillis and Poirier, but they were 14th in GOE. So, at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about Chalk and Bates, 13th in base value, but 2nd in GOE. Guadagno and Fabry, 18th in base value, but 3rd in GOE. And then you have the extreme opposite of it here, where you have a team that's in the top 5 of all the teams in terms of the technical abilities, in terms of the levels that they're getting, but they're getting hosed in GOE, right? Now, I'm not saying that they're probably doing some things to a lower grade of execution, but come on, I still want there to be some mechanism within the scoring, just like you have if you get a cue call and you automatically lose some of GOE. There has to be a way in the scoring to cap things that if you get a level 1 or 2 on something, you shouldn't be able to get the same amount of GOE that you get on something that's level 3. And I get that GOE features are different than a technical feature. Like they have difficult entries in a lift and difficult exits out of a lift to get higher amounts of GOE. But you can't tell me that it's that vastly different between this team and some of the others. Like you just can't tell me that. I mean, if you do feel that way, please do tell me that. I'll be happy to listen to. But it's so frustrating at times. But at the same time, they're a brand new team of seniors, right? It'll be interesting to see what happens with them next year because they've already passed a lot of teams. And if they can really get that consistency on point, I think they could be really interesting. This is as much as I have enjoyed this Swan Lake all season. And I think it was probably also more enjoyable because them and Davis and Smolkin went literally back to back, and they just have more of that, like more classical Swan Lake music. They have that slower section in the middle and it just comes together so much better for me than what Davis and Smolkin did. So I just really like the middle section in general for them, but good first championships for them. And 14th was Lim and Quan, and these two have been like pretty much right behind each other all season. And the rhythm dance, he had his guns out, and I'm like, I feel like all season he's been wearing longer sleeves, but maybe he hasn't. Maybe he has been wearing shorter sleeves. I don't know. I hadn't noticed if that was the case, but they were much more closer to sort of what you would see. They were 10th in base value and 11th in GOE. They didn't have this wide range like we saw with the Morass checks. And then their free dance, I mean, I've been gushing about this free dance all season. It's fantastic. It's going to be on my season's best list. I love it. I love the emotion they bring to it. And the crowd was loving it too. They gave them a standing ovation. So again, I think a very, very successful World Championships and a very successful season for Lim and Quan. 15th place was the Tashlers. And this one was a heartbreak for sure because their rhythm dance was going so well. And then her foot just slipped on his skate and they couldn't even attempt the lift. And that cost them at least 7 points. And so they were 18th after the rhythm dance, which was so problematic in so many ways because, again, you want both Czechs teams to be able to get to the Worlds. Like, it would be unfathomable to have ended up in a situation where we would only get the Tashlers or the Mrazek to Worlds next year, that they couldn't both get there. So that was such a scary thing because after the rhythm dance, they were in 18th and Katarina and Daniel were in 13th. And we're like, the Tashlers they've got to move up to at least 15th, or Katarina and Daniel have to move up. Like, oh my goodness, Katarina and Daniel, even though they were 11th in the free dance, weren't able to move up. And it was wild because them and Davis and Smolkin, they were behind Davis and Smolkin by literally 0.06. And so it was like, oh my gosh, if they miss a second spot by 0.06, like, I'm going to cry. Like, tears are going to fall down my face. And even when Lim and Kwan went, who were so fantastic, I was like, I love you guys, but I need you to finish behind the Mrazeks. Oh my goodness. So the poor Tashlers, as I mentioned, lost a lot of points in the rhythm dance and ended up 18th. The free dance I thought was just super strong. You could see like their ice coverage and their power, which you can't always see with teams. There was a little scare because originally the 1 foot step was invalidated, but it was added in at some point. Don't know what happened. Their 111 was way too low. Just a joke too low. And so I was mad because I was like, this is the problem with the scoring. Like, why are we holding back scores? Like, again, I use the men as an example because when Adam went in the first group, he still got really great components. He still got a really great tech score. So when the Tashlers go, why can't you give them the 116, 118 that they would get anyway? Like, a 111 was just ridiculous. So then I was scared that it wasn't going to be enough. But mercifully, they ended up 15th. And the Mrazeks ended up 13th, which was exactly 28, which is exactly what they needed to keep the 2 spots. And so, thank goodness. But let me just say, in the free dance, they had the Tashlers behind Davis and Smolkin, behind the Mrazeks, and behind Lim and Kwan. And I just don't think that that's right. I just don't. They also had their components at 63. And they had Davis and Smolkin ahead of them. They had Loisha and Theo, Lim and Kwan, like the Mrazeks. All these teams were higher in program components than the Tashlers were, and I just didn't think that was right. I just completely was put off with the scoring for the Tashlers, but mercifully, just enough for them to maintain those 2 spots. And this was as much as I have enjoyed this free skate all season. I've been kind of all season been like, I don't love the piano music a second year in a row, but I just kind of felt the emotion of the theme and, dedicating it to their dad in this particular performance. And I have all season. It just kind of got to me a little bit. So thought it was beautiful. All right. In 16th place was one of my favorite teams. That was Orihara and Pirinen of Finland. And they all season have been scoring, much better in the free dance than they have in the rhythm dance, and they've been able to sort of move up. It really didn't happen for them here, but even so, they were strong performance-wise in the rhythm dance. I don't think I've noticed his costume all season. It's like sparkly mesh. I guess I've just been watching her all season, but I just really enjoy him. I think he's so much fun in both programs. I mean, obviously Yuka is amazing, but they're really amazing together. And in the free dance, they have one of the best character steps of the competition. And it just reminded me of what Mark said about Caroline and Michael last season. He was like, this is just a masterclass in musicality. And that's just what I feel so much with these two, with this Chicago program. It's just such an incredible program for them this season, and I can't wait to see what they do next year. And they said they don't know yet what they're going to do next year, that they were hoping for a waltz on the rhythm dance. Not gonna happen. But I don't know. Maybe you could pick like Oh My Darling or something. I don't know. We'll see. And they're also like, they're taking suggestions. So if you have suggestions for them, then you can message them on social media and let them know your thoughts. All right. Almost done here. 17th place was Holly Harris and Jason Chan of Australia. 16th in the rhythm dance and 19th in the free dance. They had one of their best rhythm dances probably of the season for them, which thank goodness, because they were a team that I thought was very much on the bubble coming in. Wasn't sure that they were going to make the free dance, which maybe is a good time to sort of say this. There were like, was it 36 teams that were in the rhythm dance and only 20 make it through? And it just seemed so brutal because we had a lot of good teams, as I'll talk about here in a second, that didn't even make the free dance. And you have 5 flights of pairs, because at times we've just had 16 pairs that made the free skate. But this year we had 20, and I was like, well, if we're going to have 5 flights for pairs, like, why can't we have 5 flights for dance and have 24 teams? Because they have so many really good teams, and it was like, if you just made almost any mistake in the rhythm dance, you didn't make the free skate. It was so competitive. But they did make it. Their free dance is just so enjoyable. They were another team, 10th in base value, but 19th in GOE. And I mean, this free dance has been scoring low all season, and I don't know why. I think it's just a really fantastic program. They've always skated it really well, but I think it just sort of draws you in, and the scoring for them has kind of sucked, and I just don't get it. But I mean, their first twizzles were like off sync, but other than that, I mean, it again, that doesn't affect the level, it affects the GOE. Just whatever. I don't know. I thought they were fabulous. All right. 18th place was Masato and Tim from Japan. They barely made the free skate. I didn't think they would make the free skate. They were the last team to get in. She fell out of their second twizzle, and so that really affected their score. In the free dance, though, they were, I mean, literally some of the best that I have seen them. If you take this free dance with the rhythm dance that they did at Four Continents and put it together, like, that's like the potential that this team has that I have not seen ever out of them. I thought their lifts were just really nice in the free dance. They did move up because they were 17th in the free, so they moved up to 18th. But again, kind of like Holly and Jason, they were 6th in base value, but 17th in GOE. Like, can we reward these people when they do well? That's all I'm asking. Okay? All right. Moving on. 19th place was Olivia Smart and Tim Deek of Spain. And this one is another one that I missed their rhythm dance live. Thought I would be able to go back to see it and was not able to. And it really sucked because, unfortunately, the free dance was not their best, and they were 20th in the free dance. They fell out of their dance spin, and it was a real disaster for their score. They have fun moments, but in general, I just really haven't loved this routine for them. It just feels a little too, I don't know if cheesy's not the right word. Campy's not the right word. It just feels like they're better than this. Like, I don't know. I felt like the last time we saw Olivia, she was doing this really cool Mask of Zorro program. And then here they're doing like, Las Vegas Elvis impersonation. And for me, it just hasn't worked. But I think they've got a lot of good potential, but they've definitely got a ways to go for sure. And the last team in 20th place was Caroline and Shane from Ireland, of course, formerly of Canada. They were another team that I really did not expect, based upon the scores that they got at Europeans, to make the free dance, but they did. Rhythm dance is super fun. It's super freak. I just think it's so different than what we've seen a lot of teams do this season. We've seen a lot of the poppy. We haven't seen a lot of like that 80s funk. I think they really lean into that really well. Their free dance, I found rather boring at Europeans, but I enjoyed it a little bit more here. And I was just so excited that they made it to Worlds. And from my understanding, the path to getting citizenship and actually making it to the Olympics is probably going to be quite difficult for her. But they're definitely going to get more international opportunities here than what they were going to get in Canada, with it being very crowded there. All right. So, one of the big storylines of the rhythm dance was Emily Brody and Ian Somerville. That was the third American team. And they, in their rhythm dance, skating to Prince, same music selections that we see Lemon Kwam use. Nice, clean midline step. Good twizzles for her. He was a little wonky on twizzle number 3 and ended up with a level 3. But more than halfway through their choreographic rhythm sequence, he tripped. He tried to save it, and he fell. And it was really amazing that he did not take her down with him, but it was just heartbreaking because they were doing so well. And at that point in the rhythm dance, Davis and Smolkin were leading, and you're looking at the scores that they got, better on their midline step, better on a couple other components, and it's like, I think that they might go ahead of Davis and Smolkin, and this would be a huge statement, for them to get, 74. And at worst, I think that they would have gotten 72 or 73 points. But unfortunately, the fall cost them about 6 points. 5 points around for the choreo sequence, which they only ended up with a .51. They got an exclamation point on it. Plus, they got a 1 point for a fall deduction. You're also going to have less PCS with the fall as well. So, and the judges were kind of split on them. They had scores between 10th and 25th on skating skills and composition. They also only got a level 3 on their rotational lift at the end. So perhaps they were thrown off from the fall that just happened before it. I don't know. But there was a long wait for their scores. And I think we were all just hoping by some kind of miracle that they were going to get enough to qualify. But again, with it being so competitive, you basically needed like 70 points to get into the free skate. Ended up being a little bit less than that. They ended up actually only being 1.7 points away from qualifying for the free skate, but they didn't make it. They got a 65.86. And they were both just so sad in the kiss and cry. Like, I knew what happened before I saw it because like I said, I missed a lot of the rhythm dance live. I did go back and watch this on the replay. Should have watched a couple of those other ones. But so I already knew it was going to happen. And I still was almost in tears. I was so emotional. And I hated it for them so much because there was a lot of talk coming out of nationals once they were named to the world team, if they should have been named to the world team or not. A lot of people felt like Green and Parsons had earned it over their body of work. A lot of people wanted to see Zingas and Kolesnik get it, even though the potential is there, but they just didn't have a strong enough nationals to justify it. And so I really wanted to see how well they scored with this, with this whole group of European skaters and North American skaters. And it's going to have to wait at least another year. And it sucks for them. I saw somebody say at least it was Ian that fell and wasn't Emily, because it had been Emily, people would have absolutely roasted her. And that is so, so true. They already give her the blues quite a bit. I've really kind of come around to her, and I'm can't wait to see them next season because there's so much potential that they have. And I'm just, like I said, heartbroken for them that they didn't make the free skate here. And the other team that I was surprised didn't make the free skate was von Rensburg and Stefan from Germany. And they've been really strong in the rhythm dance this season, but did not score as well as we have seen them. Mark made a comment about them not being as fast as some of the other teams that he had seen. And they also didn't make the rhythm dance. Again, all of these teams would have made the rhythm dance. Would have made the free dance if there were 24 teams instead of 20. But it is what it is. So, all right. This is already a very long episode, but I must talk just briefly about the theme for next year, which, there were some reports a few weeks ago about it being a dance party from the 20th century. And I thought, there is no way that's going to be the theme. Like, they have to narrow it down, because otherwise you could have teams just choose to basically repeat what they did this year. If you were going to give them that much free range, they could just pick the 80s again. And a lot of them probably wouldn't, but that would be a possibility. But they did narrow it down to the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Kind of glad they didn't go with just one decade, but sort of gave it a little bit more range. Obviously, I'm a bit of an ice dance purist, And I much would have preferred to see a waltz or a tango or something, you know, other than a theme of music, but something more along the lines of, I mean, isn't ice dance supposed to be ballroom? Like, wasn't that the whole point? Was it supposed to be ballroom kind of on ice? So like, where are the actual ballroom dances? So just a question. But anyway, so that's going to be the theme, and we'll, get a little bit more clarity on what exactly they're going to require to be as part of step sequences and all of those things. And I might, at some point, once we get some clarity as far as what changes might be to pairs, if we're going to have any changes to singles, because they've also talked about all kinds of different things, but nothing is kind of finalized in that department once it is, and I kind of wrap my head around what exactly all that looks like. I might have an episode on that at some point in the summer. So, all right. Well, that completes my coverage from Worlds. This episode I saved for last because I knew it was going to be long, and it is. I hope you stuck with me this whole time. So the next thing that you'll get from me and your podcatcher will be season's best list for all 4 disciplines. So I'm looking forward to going back and watching some of my favorite routines and narrowing down. I feel like for ice dance, it's going to be the hardest to narrow down because there's just so many really, really good routines. In fact, I even thought about doing a separate one for the rhythm dance and a separate one for the free dance, but then I thought I was so hard on the 80s. Like I don't, I mean, I could pick 10 rhythm dances, but yeah, I think I'll probably just still stick with one. But definitely be looking for that coming out in the next few weeks, one at a time. As always, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. And I hope you enjoyed Worlds, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Oh.